I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Hey. What's up, world? Welcome to I Mix What I Like right here at I Mix What I Like. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Please do like, share, subscribe, support the platform however you feel comfortable doing. And make sure you have the bell rung, your notifications on, all of those things. Put this in your socials, invite others to join you as we engage this discussion for about an hour here. And just welcome everybody who's able to make it. This ought to be interesting. Yes, of course, of course, of course. Peace, peace, peace. Welcome everybody. I just got to say off the top, this is just funny. Yesterday, I went to this little Labor Day rally not far from where I live, and I ran into somebody that I know a little bit, and said, "Yeah, it's a break in my 5'5". Yeah, exactly. What's up, Yipper? And they said, I ran into them and they said, oh wow, I'm not used to seeing you in person. And they said, you look a lot more fit in person than you do on the show. And then they even acknowledged, they were like, I know it's a compliment, but some shade. I was like, okay, all right, all right. So I was like, well, how busted am I? Anyway, I don't know why. I just thought I got a kick out of it. I thought it was funny. But uh, yeah. So one more reason why offline is better than online. All right, everybody. So listen. So again, one of my favorite reasons for having a platform of any size, and big shout out to everybody. I don't know if I've really done enough to thank you all for the push over 10,000 subscribers. I think that's pretty dope. And Black Liberation Media is on its way to 50. So salute to everyone for that. But one of my favorite reasons for having a platform, and even back in the day, having a radio show, a mixtape radio show, is one, you get it's an excuse to interview people and talk to people you might not normally talk to, and it's also a way to engage in conversations that aren't as much as I would like readily available. So um no, I was not. I'm never at Costco. So Avery, it was never me. I'm sure whoever that good looking man was, was just out there doing his thing, but it wasn't me. And I do not drive a pickup. I don't drive a pickup, nor would I ever drive a pickup truck. So sorry, but salute to that very handsome man that was out there at Costco in his pickup truck. Uh, but anyway, but so I like being able to have these conversations, and I like it when people reach out and say they want to have conversations. And I like it when people, I love our undefeated chats, but I do like it when people, particularly if they have a disagreement, are saying, I would rather have a principled face-to-face, relatively speaking, conversation that is maybe good for the community than just sit in the chat and hate anonymously. So as I've said, I've been hosting for years discussions of around Afropessimism, and obviously with Frank Wilderson and others, and uh, more recently have responded to and been rethinking my approach. Given what some principal criticism I got was, so all the videos I'll make sure are in the show description. But you can also just search Afropessimism on the channel and find everything. Uh, but but after the last discussion, I did get an email and from our next guest who who wanted to extend the conversation. So I'm happy to do it, and time permits. So here we are. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our next guest, Michael Davis, who, among many other things, is a curator, activist, organizer, and founder of the Hoodzeum, a Black-centered, community-driven pop-up museum. And Michael is also a PhD student focusing on Black youth and activism. So, Michael, welcome to the show. Good to
I
meet you.
appreciate you.
Peace.
Peace. Good morning, y'all.
So, Michael, I read just off your email a little bit of your introduction.
Yeah.
Please feel free to tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then what has you wanting to further this conversation. Welcome.
No, absolutely. I appreciate you for. Let me take my glasses off. A little glare. I appreciate you for having me on. I've just been following you for a long time. I came across your work. Thinking about the myth of Black buying power when I was attempting to convince my people that Black capitalism will never save us, will always be at the root of our violence, amongst other things. But anyway, so I appreciate you and your work, and thank you for just letting me hit you up and giving the platform for us to have a quick discussion. But what's good, y'all? My name is Mike. I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm an organizer with a group here called Freedom Inc., who focuses on Black women, queer people, and youth, along with Southeast Asian folks as well. Because there's some interesting things I've heard over time about solidarity, which we can get through. I'm the curator and founder of I don't even know what to call it, but a traveling archive called the Hoodzeum, which is really designed to be an archival strike against the state, against the world. I saw your video on John McWhorter and a take on the Black Smithsonian, and the Hoodzeum is trying to be everything opposite of that. And if we have time near the end of this, I put together a small display for you all to look at in honor of Mumia Abu Jamal, if we have time for us to check that out.
I'm sure we can work that in. So right on. Welcome. And so I think the nature, the reason you wanted to reach out and talk had something to do with how Afropessimism shows up in activist spaces,
Yes,
and I know that was
absolutely.
some of the criticism that I was responding to recently in
Yeah,
in terms of how Afropessimism shows up in those spaces. But so what is
yeah,
your perspective on it, and what would you like me and us to understand?
yeah. For some reason, I don't know if it's just interpretation or if that the engagement with Afropessimism is typically like online, etc. But there's this lingering argument that Afropessimism deters you away from activism, from organizing. It stagnates you. It leaves you hopeless. But I remember when um, the Trayvon Martin verdict was coming out, and the not guilty verdict was given on the murderer George Zimmerman, and I remember I was working at a youth program called Upward Bound, and so I was working with um, middle schoolers, mostly Black and Hmong. And we were just sitting there. It was a different range of reactions, but myself, I was just like, what I was feeling I couldn't describe it. I couldn't articulate it. And even as a student of Black studies, thinking through a long history of theory and ideologies that would explain it, I still felt that something was missing. And that's when I came across, I think it was an interview with Frank Wilderson and Saidiya Hartman, and it was a transcription titled "Position of the Unthought," and that spoke to me, and that led to me in my engagement around Afropessimism, and it actually shifted my move and groove as an organizer and as a thinker. But more specifically, if we think about the word, I think like Afropessimism is a diagnosis of the world that is contingent upon Blackness's ontological obliteration. There's projects in in conversation with Afropessimism that allows us, in my view, to kind of create our own compasses, telescopes, GPSs in terms of how we should be moving and grooving in movement spaces, when we are above ground, underground. I think about the work, for example, of Calvin Warren, who offers to us Black nihilism and shifts us away from hope, but not hope generally, but a hope in this state, a hope in this world. So, and for me, that makes think typical things that are framed, I guess, as radical. It makes it to me normative obligations like abolition. So it actually doesn't stagnate me. It actually doesn't make me hopeless. It gives me a new way to think about the world and what to do in that world. So if I go to this African American History Museum and Culture in DC, and it's all of these artifacts, but with this narrative that speaks to uh, the redemption of Blackness, the integration of Blackness, the assimilation of Blackness, I can use like an Afro-pessimist concept like structural adjustment to understand that things like this will exist to pacify us, to distract us, to move us away from, I don't know, thinking about David Marriott, maybe something beyond freedom, maybe something beyond freedom in and of itself. Think so. Calvin Warren also offers a concept called Onticide. On one hand, it speaks to human ontology, the existence of the human, relying on Blackness's death, its outsideness. But on the other hand, it gives us a way to think through with and against the human, a practice of what to do in the world. If the Afro pessimist goal is to end the world, Black nihilism is giving us some insight around how we might destroy the world. Joy James's captive maternal, in her own words, begins with the end of the world. But the captive maternal in those stages, and I think we can add some more complexity to those stages or disrupt them or whatever. But again, as an organizer, as an activist, and someone who I would call myself an Afro pessimist, a Black nihilist, and maybe beyond. But it allowed me to take organizing and activism more seriously. It gave me a new analysis around, for example, gender and sexuality and what that means as an organizer and who I'm serving, how to push back on certain narratives and frameworks. Um, but all in all, when I hear the Afro-pessimist demand the necessity to destroy the world or to end the world, the Black nihilist claim to destroy the world, it allows me to free myself from anything that the world, the state could offer. And so long as we attempt to organize a freedom fight, a freedom struggle, or conceptualize liberation underneath these constraints, we will be left here. And I think Afropessimism pushes us to think about, ontology. How is humanity in and of itself? How is humanity in and of itself contingent upon Black suffering? How does Blackness in and of itself operate as violence? I think that shifts what I do as an organizer. It makes me desire abolition, but also acknowledge that abolition is not enough unless we're speaking to the abolition of the world. Does that make sense? Or
It
is there
makes
any
perfect.
questions around that?
So my
But,
issue is not that it doesn't make sense. My issue is, and most recently, is
mhm.
in some of the claims is how this approach manifests in among younger organizers and activists.
Yes.
So, I'm not involved enough. I'm not on the ground enough to see for myself. So when I have people I consider to be uh, highly skilled and highly conversant with these histories and arguments and with activism itself, and they're raising principal criticism with me around my defense of Afro-pessimism and maybe some myopia around how it's playing out in these streets, so to speak. That's what
Mhm,
that's so again. I read Frank. I haven't read as much Marriott. I have, some Saidiya
mhm.
Hartman. I don't claim to be, but
No,
I've been very clear on what I like
yeah.
about Frank's work, what it inspires in me in terms of thought and action. But that's very different. And I was very much moved by the one piece of criticism I got most recently, that one of the differences between, for instance, how I approach it and how maybe some younger organizers approach Afro-pessimism
Mhm,
is in my prior engagement with, broadly speaking, the Black radical tradition.
mhm.
Whereas the idea that if younger organizers and activists are beginning their or engaging Afro-pessimism a little bit earlier, that it might have a different, and from their perspective, a negative impact on those younger activists and organizers. So
No, understood.
so
When I,
yeah, go
to
ahead.
that point, when teaching, so in my organizer role, I'm kinda given a responsibility to think about, like, building curriculums for youth organizers specifically. So when teaching Black youth Afro-pessimism in on the ground, for example, in our Police Free Schools campaign, here in Madison, of course, initially, there's some visceral reactions because there's a struggle to understand, but that's why we're in community, in dialogue around the idea. But once there's an understanding gained, it's not, we can't do anything, we should give up. It's, okay, now, yes, we must take these police out of schools minimally because that won't even get us free. It is not. So I am kind of confused around the the dialogue or the claim that, I guess, what is the overall, what is it doing to youth? Because I think that if I'm doing post-colonialism, psychoanalytics, critical race theory, any framework, any ideology, it needs to be coupled with histories. I think art, music, a whole range of things. So, and we if we're talking about, like, not an Afro pessimism, but a general pessimism about this world, one, I think is valid, but two, you can do that just by walking down the street and being Black. You actually don't need, Afro pessimism is just speaking to a reality, a truth about Blackness that we already kind of know and feel. You actually don't need Afropessimism to be hope. I think I was hopeless before Afropessimism. Actually, I was like, nothing is going to, everything we're doing, like we're organizing, we're going to school board meetings, we got free breakfast programs, we'll tie up a judge and duct tape a sawed-off shotgun to his neck.
Just
But
theoretically,
then
hypothetically, and talking obviously in historical reference to perhaps what happened at the Marin County Courthouse in 1970, but certainly not something that's being advocated here on these publicly
sorry, no, I
accessible
was,
Google
yeah,
YouTube streets. I just want to be clear for our
no,
Google
no, no,
overlords that
no, yeah,
I am not to be associated with these lunatic radicals that I might have on to discuss every once in a while. I just want to be clear. So,
yeah,
we're talking historically in reference to
yes,
Jonathan
and I was just
Jackson.
speaking to the fact that being Black is enough to be hopeless about America, to be hopeless about existing this way. So why is Afropessimism unique in impacting younger Black youth this way then? If Black youth picked up the autobiography of Malcolm X, could they not have the same response? Or if they picked up the
So no, so
autobiography,
the argument would be no.
but why? I guess why
and
not?
again,
I guess you know what I'm saying.
the
Why
argument.
not when Afropessimism really is just, you know, again, a meta theory of all of these things. So if I'm reading Afropessimism, what would be the distinctions, I guess, or the differences from engaging other radical and necessary work that would condemn the state, albeit maybe differently, but still a condemnation of the state?
So
Like,
what I'm
what would it? Where is it? You know what I'm? I
and
guess
again,
does that make
again,
sense?
I don't particularly see the issue, but
Okay.
many others reach out to me seeing the issue. So
Yeah.
what I hear them saying is so for one clear difference in the example that you gave is that the idea historically has been, even with all of its flaws, when people read Malcolm's autobiography, the idea was I want to stop singing and start swinging. The idea is
Exactly.
that the idea is that when people hear Afro-pessimist arguments, when they read various Afro-pessimist literature, that the inducement is to just say it's hopeless and to
Yeah.
brand that hopelessness as I'm not going to be in solidarity with other groups. I'm not going to be involved in any sort of material struggle, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested in conceiving of a world that we would want to build. That so the argument then becomes, well, Afro-pessimism just encourages disengagement
Mm-hmm.
and is therefore antithetical to whatever form of the Black radical tradition that we want to pick up.
Yeah.
Again, my reading of it has never resulted in that conclusion, but
No, for
again,
sure.
I'm not where
And I've
others.
heard you say that multiple times, for
So I
sure.
just want to be clear. But that, and I'm doing the best I can to, as they say, steel man the criticism that I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if there now, so and I was moved by that point. If someone picks up Afro-pessimist literature and argumentation, which somewhat different, which to your other part of your point may be what is necessary as a difference maker to having people conclude in some, again, I give up type of thing, because prior to the rise of all this work, as you said, you might read other people's work, you might even just be in your Blackness and reach a very hopeless conclusion, but that's different than having a body of literature that feeds that informs that
Yeah.
shapes
And
that.
I think that's
And for some, they're saying it
interpretation.
shapes that
Yeah.
in a way that causes this encourages disengagement.
I hear that, but that is a claim that Afro-pessimism would encourage a disengagement. To me, like what I was beginning to say is I felt hopeless before Afro-pessimism. When I heard the term, oh, destroy the world, which is something metaphysical, when we think when the argument became metaphysical and outside of even politics in and of itself, that freed me. It made me want to organize harder and more deeply and to think more deeply. I felt stagnant before. I felt cyclical. I'm like, we are talking about the same things in different ways. the new studies are coming out is just renaming violences that we've seen before. The conversations are, it just felt the same. I'm not saying with not necessary, not without rigor, not without complexity, but they just felt the same. So I'm like, what if I'm reading the autobiography of Malcolm X and the police have been killing us since from then till now? What do I do with that feeling? So that to me, that's interpretation. We cannot fault Afropessimism as the body of work speaking to social death, gratuitous violence, natal alienation, etc. That says that Blackness cannot be assimilated into the human project. We cannot fault Afropessimists or the body of work for interpretation. I think that's on us to then continue to do the community work, the work in classrooms and other ed spaces to
So he
bring
would be Mhm.
a guide, my fault, to bring a guide around then to what we do. And on the point around solidarity, that is like I just told you I work for a Black and Southeast Asian org. Afropessimism is not anti-solidarity. It simply states that in the making of the world between humanity and Black, when we're thinking humanity, Blackness is the fundamental antagonism when it comes to violence that structures the world, which means that we are positioned as the lowest degree of eugenic descent, as the outside ontological obliteration. So not that I ain't gonna get down with you if you non-Black, it's just that our goal is not to free ourselves to get back the land. It is to destroy the world that made possession of land possible. So it's just to say that, are you down with destroying the world? It's a question of solidarity. Are you down with destroying the world? I'm down for fighting with you. I'm down with it. But since our freedom cannot exist within this realm, and since your ontology isn't contingent upon human existing in this in the same way that Blackness is, are you down with that fight? I think it's really a question, not a denial. It's an invitation. And the invitation that is read denial, that's interesting to me because especially if we think about non-Black folks who pick up Afro-pessimism, Shadi Malaklu, others, to think about how Afro we can use Afro-pessimism to even make sense of non-Black struggle. I think one issue is we're really not engaging the work in and of itself. We're just engaging people's feelings around the work, but not the work. So I think,
That part,
and most of the
look,
times we're
I
not
don't mean to
even,
cut you off, but
yeah,
that
my
part
part,
has
no, do
been
your thing.
but that has been my biggest argument in defense of Afro-pessimism, that I have not seen, and I've read, and I went back and read a number of the criticisms, even from some brilliant thinkers, and I don't see them engaging with the work, and I don't see, and I see them attributing claims that are not made. Now, when and I and when brother Mamadou Tal was on with Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, and I consider all of them, fellow travelers and homeboys. He said Afro-pessimism is he said single-handedly removing a young generation from activist struggle. And I reached out and invited him to follow up on that, and he never did, but he did say in that interview that is tall, that his defense of that claim was an interview that Frank Wilderson gave, and I'm not sure if he was talking to me or someone else, but he said that when asked the question, and I went back and found it, and Frank did say it, although I think the context is a little bit lost, but that if Palestine was free, that wouldn't necessarily mean anything better for African people. So Tall took that to mean you don't. That's encouraging a lack of solidarity with Palestinians. Taken on its own, I could see how people would read that. Taken in the entirety of Frank's argument, I don't agree that that's how it would be interpreted. But I also do agree that that's a legit question. So as someone, I'm fully in solidarity with Palestine, but I think it's a legit question to raise. If Palestine were free, what does that mean for Africans in Palestine or anywhere else in the Arab world? And I see room for some concern for African people. That said, though, if and I can't, and I don't know how this would be measured, and I don't know how those who make the claims that Tal made are reaching these conclusions, which is why I would have loved for him to follow up with me on
Mhm.
to what that is that Afro-pessimism is in his case single-handedly, but in others playing a large role in discouraging younger generations from engaging principled activism and solidarity. If that is in fact the case, to the extent it is the case, I am concerned, and I'm also concerned that folks are not, where Frank has been very clear that he's not discouraging its solidarity.
Yes.
But I feel like, but I am also concerned that a young group of potential revolutionaries are eschewing the rest of the Black radical tradition, including all of the positives that would come from African-centered traditions, Marxist traditions, Black feminist traditions, Africana womanist traditions. Like I am concerned that all of this work is just being pushed aside, and all of the great work that people who have picked up those ideas have done is to what extent that is true, that it's being pushed aside in favor of an Afro-pessimist perspective that maybe is itself incomplete. I mean, as you've said, as Frank has said, it's just an analysis of the world. It's not necessarily prescriptive. But maybe that's a flaw, that it doesn't have it's not advocating for some
Mhm.
beyond the destruction of this world. And then I'll end here by saying, for instance, Kwame Ture used to say, the purpose of Black studies is to destroy America. And of course, as we clarify for our Google overlords, that was not meant to be taken literal. Certainly, I would not take that literally as a Black
Mhm.
studies scholar. But he was also very much involved, that is, Ture, in intense solidarist activism and global internationalist politics, and with a desire to, whatever, if people might find it in itself flawed, but a desire to reconquer, reclaim rather, the African continent under scientific socialism.
Heard.
So
So
yeah.
so a few responses. One, Afro-pessimism as meta theory is not saying ignore all other theories and contributions. It's not possible without it, in fact. It is just, I think when I revisit certain texts, even in Black literature, Toni Morrison, Beloved, like, it just gives you an additional lens to think about Blackness through. It is not to say those things don't matter, we shouldn't engage them, but it also lists limitations. Just like Black feminism, there's many iterations of Black feminism that might critique a former iteration. A queer radical Black feminism might critique another form of Black iteration of Black feminism for excluding Black trans women or little Black girls, for example. So I think Afro-pessimism is just pushing us to think, if Blackness is outside of humanity, what does Fanon mean? What does Kwame Ture mean? What does James Baldwin mean?
So let me jump in here and,
What does
raise that piece. So when my homeboy raised that, it gave me what I found is the most succinct and clear criticism that helped me understand why some are concerned with Afro-pessimism. So when you ask what does Fanon mean, my homeboy said the problem with Afro-pessimism is that Frank takes the ontological death that Fanon speaks of specifically only within the context of Western European colonialism, or colonialism of any form. Frank takes and Afropessimism takes writ large that Black people are ontologically dead, period, full stop, an end of story. And Fanon's point about that ontological death was only within the context of a colonial situation, which
Right.
induces
Yeah.
and encourages people to end colonization, to become anti-colonial, whereas Afropessimism just encourages people to sink back into the recesses of the world, I guess. I don't know. Does that
Yeah.
what do
And
you think of
yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah. I think we know Fanon was a humanist, and Afropessimism draws from Fanon to scaffold arguments, but to definitely make a distinction. In my view, Afropessimism may not explicitly name a beyond because of what would like I psychologically we would reproduce it in attempting to not reproduce it. Like Jared Sexton says, maybe we don't maybe we don't only need to destroy the world, but a desire for a world, for meaning making in the way that we typically do it. So for me, Afro-pessimism isn't claiming like Fanon is Afro-pessimist. It's just doing what any other framework does. Take previous work to build the argument, and we can critique, and people can critique if they think the application is off or where it is. But Blackness in the current iteration of the world, I think which Afro-pessimism is speaking to in the current iteration of the world is socially dead. That doesn't mean it's permanent, but permanent in this structure, yes, but permanent as existence. And no, I think people confuse that, like permanence in existence versus permanence in the current structure of the world. So for me, Afro-pessimism pushes us to go beyond. How do we think and imagine beyond? How do we do music and art to enable and enact that? I think it's just a project that we need to figure out. But so yes, it's so we can talk about, or we can attempt to go to previous moments prior to social death and attempt to build worlds based on those things. But what if the very act of building without certain analytics, like a Afro-pessimism, like about Black nihilism, increases likelihood for that reproduction of the very things we are attempting to avoid or prevent? I think Afro-pessimism is just serving to do that work, if that makes sense. Not to
So let me ask you. Well, let me ask you a sort of practical question, and then I want to pull up some of
Okay.
a few
And I
questions
have
from
one
the
more thing
chat
to
if we
say about
can.
the generation of youth activists. Like, I forgot the brother who's his critique around basically Afro-pessimism removing an entire generation of youth activists. Like Jared Sexton says, the parasite in Afro-pessimism is not Blackness, it's the world. So why wouldn't the world be doing that? Why wouldn't the long history and the current state of things be removing us? What would be the evidence that Afro-pessimism is doing that versus uh,
That's a fair question. I don't. That's one thing I have a question about. Like, what is the evidence that it's Afro-pessimism discouraging activism?
and
It could be so
where
many,
are the
many, many, many
spaces
other
and
things.
places
Yeah.
where like where are the youth, Black youth reading Afro-pessimism? Like the actual spaces, where are they? Where Black youth are reading Afro-pessimism and saying I'm hopeless. Like I've never seen a video, a talk, a discussion. Where are these things taking place?
So what I'm hearing are anecdotal references to people in organized spaces, and this will be where I can raise this question that they're in these organized spaces, and then here come these Afro pessimists
Yeah, but
creating
who? But
disruption and
what
disunity.
Afro-pessimist? Who's teaching? But see, I just have a lot of
I
questions
get,
around that. It makes me
so let me ask. So let me ask. So like so Let me ask you. So, in the work that you've done and are doing
Yeah.
and seeing, when if you are in, let's just use Palestine as an example. If you're in a space where the focus is support for Palestinians and ending the genocide, how does Afropessimism inform your engagement with that with that effort?
Some of my closest homies are Palestinian and have been to Palestine. I got homies who are Black who've done the same thing. If I'm an abolitionist, if I'm against America, if I'm against these structures, fighting for Palestine is a must. It's a guarantee for Palestinian liberation. But we can't ignore the anti-Blackness in Palestine, the experiences of Africans there, and in whatever we mark as freedom for Palestine, whether that's getting land back or simply just stopping the fucking murders. Afropessimism pushes us to say that this anti-Black world allows for another Palestine to happen, another occupation to happen, and also anti-Blackness still remains as a structure. That's all it says, is that the work is not done when Palestine is free. Not that we don't continue forward in that struggle. And if we and talking anecdotally, we can talk about the anti-Blackness though amongst non-Black people because of how widespread and expansive anti-Black ideologies is through media, etc. So we all embody it, even Black people. But outside of that, political commitment will remain, but destroying the world is at the forefront while I'm doing that work. That's
I
it.
think
But it's not
I,
a no, but and I can understand other people's points who have been doing solidarity work for a long time who may just want to be tired and who want to just work with Black people. I think that's okay too. People work with their own people all the time. At Freedom Meet, we're Black and Southeast Asian, but we have our own cultural spaces that's just Black and that's just Southeast Asian sometime. I think that's okay too. So
mhm.
I think again, I think people are upset with Afro-pessimism for even people calling it bourgeois. Like a lot of Black theory and ideology and thinking comes out of the academy, starting from the ground, and the thinkers go to the academy. And I don't know. It's just that a lot of the critiques are not
Well,
about the arguments of the work. Do people have a problem with social death, gratuitous violence? Do people have a problem with fungibility? Do people have why isn't the conversation around unpacking and learning the theory versus how people are interpreting it? Because even if I said I'm a critical race theorist or um, thinking about Black Crit, Michael Dumas and Kiana Ross, if I say I'm focusing on Black critical theory or Black feminism, are people saying, what about Latina feminism? We allow that specificity to occur. And I think specificity here gives a clear guide around what we do now, and that whatever we might build or not build or imagine beyond building is not a replication of this in a different way. So I don't, yeah. And I think we, and I think Afro pessimism in a way articulates many just things across the Black radical tradition. Many things from political thinkers, from academics, and people who are fused with in the in between. So I am not seeing what people are claiming to see. And we are not free because of the world, not because of Afro-pessimism. And I think if we
that's
understand
mhm.
that, we can find the spaces and play. Ideological clarity is something I learned in movement. I can learn where I get down with you or not. We need to be thinking about coalescing and strategizing, but we're debating whether we're making wild claims. Like, there's some wild claims made about Afropessimism that are allowed to just go freely. Even things around white partners. There's a people. Every theory got white practitioners with white partners. It's just, if you are uncomfortable with destroying the world, just say that. Just say we're uncomfortable with saying destroy the world because it goes beyond freedom, because it goes beyond the freedom fight, because it goes around our Black business, our Black capitalism, and even our Black freedom struggle. Just say we're uncomfortable, we scared, we don't know what's next. But when Harriet was on a plantation and people are like, oh, maybe we should negotiate with Massa. Maybe the freedom struggle should stay on the plantation. Maybe we should stay here and try to figure it out. No, she just knew it was the beyond. Even though the escape was to another plantation ontologically, but it was just to get out of this thing. We need to destroy the world and be very careful about that. I think that's what Afropessimism is saying. Just be very careful. And some pessimists might disagree, but just be very careful about this rebuilding. Because what are we building up? And we need to understand all the ways in which the world conditions us to wanting a front lawn, to how streets and cities are organized, to architecture, to gender, to sexuality, to the clothes we wear, to the things that we find beautiful. Those all have to be a part of the conversation and more. And Afropessimism gave me the lens to do that in the now. So I'm not fighting for the artifacts to stay in the Smithsonian, for better police training, for Black presidents. And to go beyond that, and even those who might critique those things, to even go further and say, maybe there's an essence, maybe there's a somethingness that we don't have language around that we need to be trying to speak to. And Afropessimism, Black nihilism. It's not just Afropessimism. I know we're speaking about Afropessimism, but it's it's the work of Saidiya Hartman, Christina Sharp, Joy James, David Marriott, so many others. Patrice Douglas, that allows me to arrive here. So when I read their work, I'm just encouraged to a different type of action, not an inaction.
So I just want to say, I don't know, just to say, I don't know if this is to, I'm not going to drop Frank from this analysis. I don't know if this is directed at me. So, and I don't care who his partner is.
Oh, that's what I was just saying. Like, why does that even?
And Josh saying that he's writing weird fanfic about master slave dynamic with his white wife. Our people are never going to take that serious. But that's what people say. The same thing about Fanon. They say the same thing about Cheikh Anta Diop.
And he was talking about his ontological relation to his wife in that piece that this person is referring to. That his love relationship with his wife does not change the ontological relationship to his wife as white, as master. I don't know what this person is. That's what. Are we reading?
So Josh is sharp. Josh is, Josh is comrade.
Okay,
and
no disrespect, but I'm just saying it's like how we frame the reading. To me, it doesn't seem like good faith when it's framed certain ways to critique.
So that's what I've often said is what I feel like people are critiquing is more about Frank's personality and his personal choices with his partner and stuff like that. And all to the point that I find frustrating, to discourage the focus on all the other stuff that he said, particularly in Incognito, which is really my favorite stuff, which isn't even Afropessimism really. So like I'm like, that's the stuff that's the part I don't really get. And if we're going to talk about dropping people from our analysis based on their personal behavior,
that would be everybody.
That's a very, because there have been people named in the chat who I'm not even going to engage because their public facing work does not match their private acting behavior. So I'll deal with them for their work and will not call out the behavior. But I just think there's and I know, and Josh, I get it. There's more thought behind those in analysis, and not just those lines. But the same thing could be said for what I'm saying and for what Mike is saying. So that's my point. But that's my point, that people do that all the time. They will leave out the analysis and throw out the lines, and then we don't. And I feel like we don't get anywhere. So, same thing here. I'm not sure what Stepmaster is saying is disingenuous. And I will say I don't appreciate that being applied to the discussion here, to anything that I'm doing, or involved in. I don't appreciate that, Stepmaster. But I will say, if the claim here is that people are behaving differently online than they are in the way that Mike is describing his engagement, or the engagement that Mike is familiar with Afropessimism, I again, that's part of what I'm trying to get past: the anecdotal, the social media, the and why I've felt like, even among principled people that I know who are critical of Afropessimism, the argument is largely anecdotal. And again, speaking about what the impact is of Afropessimism in activist spaces. Now, this is Mamadou, another one saying, not the Tal that I was necessarily talking about, but this Mamadou is saying Afropessimists are always consistently vague, that they can always wriggle out of criticism by saying they didn't mean what they very strongly implied.
But say what those arguments
and
are,
I think there
though.
the implication is
Like
that
what?
the implication is that despite what some may say, that they discourage actual principally engaged activists.
That seems like a belief
Solidarity.
at that point versus something based on what is. It's just like, it seems like a religious. Like, I just believe that, even though people who are doing the work is saying otherwise, people who are engaging in the work are saying otherwise, and we have no evidence. And I also wanted to shout out real quick too, because there's been a lot of talk about Afropessimism in the debate scene. But Dr. Shanera Reed Brinkley, her work is about Black youth on the debate scene, and specifically thinking about Afropessimism. But her work thinks about like how Blackness in and of itself and Black youth debaters kind of disrupt the script of the debate scene. And if you read her work, you can have some actual empirical examples of what it looks like for Black youth to engage in a debate scene, Afropessimism. It's interesting to me, like, her work never comes up for people who make arguments around Black youth debate scene and Afropessimism. But Dr. Shanera Reed Brinkley's work never comes up, even though there are examples there. But
I've only heard anecdotally from some in the debate world who have said that some of the arguments around Afropessimism's use there has been overblown.
yeah, and I again, I think
But
because we
I
can,
haven't read her work
yeah,
either,
and I'm sorry to cut you. Not this thing, yeah. To me, it's just like, now I get a better understanding. It's like people operating on opinions and beliefs, but not like, when I hear, like, okay, if someone says Afropessimism is making Black youth hopeless, and then I ask them, what about Afropessimism? What about the logic of the argument? What arguments specifically are doing that? There's never an answer. So but from my experience and from the people I know doing that work, it is not a removal. It might be a disengagement from liberal activism. People might be upset that Black youth may no longer want to only go to the voting booth and only go to the school board meeting and only go to a rally. Now they want something deeper. They might still do those things too, for sure, but want something deeper. I just feel like there's so many examples too across history around even our well-meaning and well-intended Black like elders scare around where Black youth are heading ideologically, like civil rights movement, like, oh, don't be a communist, don't be too much of a radical, stay, you know, the Harlem Renaissance when Black art was just taking off and manifesting in different ways. There was the same sentiment, a feeling, a belief that it would do us wrong somehow. So I think we need
Well,
spaces and places where we're actually in dialogue about the work in and of itself. And we should move away from like personal attacks on people who we don't even really know. And out of not to ignore anecdotes are important, but to ground those anecdotes in something else. So, you know, we're not let it occur.
it's funny you say that because one of the main criticisms I hear, particularly of his most recent work, is that Frank uses too many anecdotes to make his argument. That Afro-pessimists use too many anecdotes to make their
Yeah. And I
argument.
think Frank, yeah, I think he
But
was attempting to, I feel like Afro pessimists, we're always trying to respond to something in a way. On one hand, it's like it's too complex, it's too academic driven, and then there's one that's more like poetic and prose centered.
it's
Now
too
it's too
anecdotal.
anecdotal. It's this,
Well, listen,
and then even when people are there to verify things like an incognito or in his text Afro pessimism, it's still not enough. When the evidence and truth are not enough, like when you talking to, and I'm not comparing,
but again, but the same thing. Incognito is condemned for its lack of evidence. That Frank's making claims in that book that are not demonstrable or
Mhm.
provable. And as I've said,
Right, and I
I
bet you if
admit
we
I don't
went
give
through many
I don't care
biographies and texts, we would find things that we might not be able to prove like on hand, but I think there's other things that would verify it. But I don't even want to see that's what sometimes I get wrapped up into that. I'm talking about Afro pessimism. What is it about social death that moves Black youth away from activism? What is it about fungibility, the claims around it that moves Black youth
if
away from fungibility? I mean, away from activism. I'm not.
if we could prove that happens, I do. Again, I'm moved by that criticism. That if your introduction to critical thought is Afro-pessimism and not other forms of Black radical tradition work, I do see that without some important analytical historical guardrails, that people could fall off into. I'm not working with no Palestinians. I'm not trying to struggle. I'm not working with no
Yeah,
Latinos. I'm not
and
trying to
not
do
just to be
nothing. And I can
misinterpretation.
but I don't know to what extent that's
Yeah,
actually happening and to what extent that's actually the reason why, if there is evidence that young people are not engaging more than other times, that this is the reason. So
no, I
that's
got
all
you. I got you.
that's
I
the,
got you. And I
you
know
know,
you just communicate. You just trying to be a platform so we can have these discussions versus short conversations on Twitter and stuff like that.
which
Me
I don't
either.
even
Me
pay
either.
attention to.
But
Let me read this super chat because I do want to give you a chance
okay.
to show your Mumia display. But so thanks, Hebron, for the super chat. I admittedly haven't read the work, but can imagine the criticism comes from something its critics feel intuitively agreeance with on a surface level, but they lack the maturity to compartmentalize to push forward, perhaps. Thank you, Hebron. I that makes some sense to me as well, and that's sort of what I'm talking about in terms of that particular criticism that I'm uh, uh, open to. And that's why, so even as I've engaged on a limited basis Afro-pessimist arguments, I'm admittedly doing so with a different kind of lens, or with a lens, I should say, that's been largely shaped and framed by I like to think a nice little potpourri of Black radical tradition thinking. So, but okay. Uh, I know I'm a little bit shorter on time today than I had initially thought. So, but I do want to give you a chance to have any last comments and to share some of what your display is, if you you want to walk us through some
Yeah,
of
I
that.
just end by saying Afropessimism isn't about despair. It's just about clarity. And I think clarity specifically in our movement organizing spaces. And those conversations are what are needed now. But otherwise we're going to just continue in this cycle of accusation and anecdote. And I think and I think divisions are caused because of these interpretations. So to me, Afropessimism is also offering like a labor of love for us to get down with each other. But and let's just not I think I said this earlier, but just don't forget that we're fighting the world. We want to destroy the world. That's we want to destroy the world. So
So you mentioned a few names and books and
yeah,
stuff. And if you at some
I
point
got
after
you.
we finish today, if you wouldn't mind, send me some stuff. I'll add it to the show description so I and others can follow up
For
on some
sure.
readings. And then yeah, but yeah, show us. I'm gonna give you the full
Okay.
screen here and let you walk us through this.
I'm trying to see how
Whatever you've
to
got.
flip this screen.
Oh yeah. Do you even hear me when I'm backstage
Yeah, I can
like
hear you.
this? Okay. I'm not sure if
Okay.
you can
Yeah,
just
I
turn
think.
your. There you go. Okay.
Can y'all see that? Hey, it's weird.
Yeah. It's a little bit.
Is
There
that
you go.
better?
That's better. That was. Yeah. Well, it now went small again,
Okay.
or went skinny again. But
Let's try this.
anyway, yeah, that was it. You zoomed in there for a
What
second, and
about now?
then no, we can see at least.
Okay,
We can see.
oh wow.
You know.
I don't know how to work this platform's camera too well. Sorry, y'all. But I just want in the beginning I had mentioned that I'm the founder and curator of the Hoodzeum. It's a traveling museum where I like highlight Black radical history specifically through different exhibits, installations, etc. But just thinking about how we just came out of Black August and our ongoing and current fight for Mumia and his current health battles, I just wanted to put together a quick on the spot display in honor of Mumia.
And then you say you moved this. This is a
Yes.
mobile
Yeah.
operation.
I can, and this is just a few artifacts. I have over 2,000 artifacts from the Black Panther Party, from the Black Liberation Army, etc. So here are some original flyers from the campaigns over time, specifically the 90s.
Wow.
This is actually an original from the Black Liberation Army when Assata was kidnapped and arrested before her freedom from the prison. These are like mail cards sent out to people to raise awareness. And this is the back of that from the Black Liberation Army, an original. This is a Free Mumia tee from the 90s. Just like what this artwork. George Jackson,
Yeah,
original newspaper
yeah.
from the Black Panther Party. Another paper with his funeral announcement. And
Poncho, yeah, the 90s, what a time to live.
this is a funeral, what is it called? Bulletin for Fleeta Drumgo, one of the Soledad brothers.
Mhm.
I saw this. But anyway, I just wanted to put a quick little display just to shout out our people in a more erratic. Here's some other random things if y'all just want to see them real quick from the Black Panther Party free breakfast program and Freedom School. But anyway, just shout out to all of our political prisoners, and we're gonna continue to fight to get y'all out of there.
Now that's a museum I can be supportive of. That's what I'm talking
Yeah, I gotta.
about.
No, I appreciate that for sure. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I just meant to.
That's what's up. And yeah, please send me a link. I didn't find one initially, but please send me a link if you have anything about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
online. I can add that to the show
Okay.
description as well, including anything else that you suggest for further reading. I definitely appreciate you reaching
I
out.
appreciate you having me
I
on.
admit I really like. Yeah, and I'm down. Obviously, we can continue these discussions with you, with others, with those in the chat. We got to find a way to have some principled struggle through
Yeah,
all of
and I'll be
this.
down to continue to have the conversations. I was trying to avoid the theory talk as much as possible, but I would definitely be down to like get into the actual arguments of Afro-pessimism as well, and where there's departures and extensions like through Black Nihilism. That's never discussed around how Black Nihilism, Calvin Warren's Black Nihilism is an extension of Afro-pessimism and might perhaps give us some guidance around what to do in the now. But I think it's just a lot of possibility for things to move and shake. But I appreciate y'all. Thank you for having me on again. I know you was a short on time, but I do appreciate it. And y'all can follow me, right? I'm building my the Hoodzeum. The Hoodzeum only been around for like 3 months now. I'm building a website right now, but if you are on Instagram or like Facebook, you can follow at the Hoodzeum. And you can find my work on there.
Excellent. I'll make sure the links are in the show description as well. Please send me all that, everything else. And I really appreciate it. This has been great. Thank you very much.
Y'all. Appreciate you, Dr. Paul.
Anytime. Take
Appreciate
good care.
Everybody in the
Mike
chat
Davis,
too. I'm sorry I couldn't read all of them during the thing, but I appreciate y'all in the chat.
No, absolutely. Undefeated chat. Mike, thank you very much, man. We'll
I
talk again
appreciate you.
soon.
Peace.
Take good care. Peace. All right, everybody. Big salute to Mike Davis. I really appreciate that. People should continue to reach out if they want to engage these discussions further. And I'm happy to try to support that. Big thanks to everybody who was able to make it here live. To those who will see and hear this later, peace as well to you. Only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. If you got nothing better to do, Sunday, September 28th, sign up even for free at my Patreon, link in the show description, and hang out with me for my virtual birthday party. All right. Still working on exactly what we're going to get in. We're going to have some fun that evening. So, but thanks again, everybody. Big salute. Forgive the more or less quick rush off and the more relatively shorter show today, but you all know what's going on. Peace, everybody. Only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And I will catch you next time right here with more.
What did you sacrifice? Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like.